Thank you. So yeah, I'm Kostas. Together with Nikos, we are going to be telling you a story today. So it's going to be easier. We are aware that this is the last session of the day. And to make it even better for you, we are going to compensate you with these very rare, we don't even have them, bags. So we are going to try to make this interactive and fun for you. It's not going to be very code intense. And the story that we intend to tell you is how you can write awesome applications without having to write a ton of code. That's what we want you to get out of this session. How we can write applications without having to write a ton of code. So the story begins on Monday morning, and we've all been there. We have a Monday morning meeting with the leadership team, and it turns out that over the weekend, they thought of a new service they want to release. And yeah, we are having to face that meeting, right? So the new service starts simple. So we want to create a new bot that's going to make our developer team's life easier. The bot must use Teams and Slack, because we have teams that both use Teams and Slack. And the bot should be able to read, respond, and create issues and branches for these issues. And the project should cost nothing for the company, right? Why would we pay for something like that? And lastly, we need it yesterday. We should be having this by last week. Why didn't you have it, right? So this is the story, right? And to give out the first gift, the first bag, any ideas on how we should go about doing that? Start implementing that new service? Yeah. Yeah. Good idea. You're going to be getting the bag because you're courageous and you raised your hand. So yes, that's an idea. But what we shouldn't do is jump to a solution, right? And Einstein used to say that if I have to finish a project in an hour, I would take 55 of these minutes to plan for it and then have just 5 minutes to implement it, right? So whenever you are given a task or a project, resist the temptation to jump to a solution. That's the first rule of any project. Resist the temptation to jump to your keyboard and start typing code, right? Because most of the cases, that's going to be something that you will regret at the end of at the end. Do not reinvent the wheel. That's a common paradigm. Do not try to do something that's already out there. Less code is more, actually, in most of the cases. And my favorite one, use keys. Keep it simple, right? As simple as possible.
And stupid.
Yeah. So how do we start, Nico?
Sure. So how do we start? First of all, we have to set up the necessary components to start plumbing that information that resides on our favorite source control and collaboration tool, so GitHub. First thing we should do, integrate with GitHub.
Pause.
How?
We need to give another bag, Nico, right?
Okay.
Ask a question to...
So how can we integrate with GitHub? What are our options? Anybody knows? Yeah.
Yep. Another courageous colleague. So you'll be getting another of these rare bags.
That was easy.
Easy, yeah.
Okay, of course, GitHub, as a any good source control that respects itself, of course, has a REST API able to actually do most, if not all, the operations I can do on the UI in a programmatic way. So REST API that is. How do we consume that API though? How do we create the necessary infrastructure, let's say, and components to really make it easy for our service to consume that API? We will use a proxy API. Why should we do that though? REST API is able to be consumed right away. What we want to achieve by using a proxy API is we want to really expose only the necessary endpoints for our bot. We just need a couple of operations, not the whole surface of the API. We want to make it sure that not the other operations will not be available, and that will not have a surface attack, let's say, that is hidden behind our bot. We want to insert default values for some API parameters, actually to make it even simpler for our bot developer to really pull in and put the parameters that are only necessary and prepare or use the default values that we select for the bot. We want to be able to throttle. We now create a dependency for an external API that is used for many other use cases within the company. We don't want to overload through our bot, GitHub, and actually have any kind of different side effects, let's say, by the operation of this bot. So we want to make sure that we keep under control the rate of those requests. Of course, we want to manage the output, and if needed, to transform it in a way that it's easier to be consumed. So we actually want to be able to get that output, either to select which part of the output to expose to the bot, or even to pre-calculate some of that information.
Yeah, and as we've seen in many cases when we are leveraging third-party APIs, there are cases where they introduce breaking changes, right? So we want to avoid having to rewrite our bot code every time the third-party API provider changes something in their API. So we are abstracting, we are providing a facet to that API so that we keep our bot implementation the same even if the GitHub API changes, or even if we decide that we are not going to be using the REST API method to integrate with GitHub, right? So that's what makes having a proxy really valuable and necessary for our solution.
Okay.
So
what about the bot? How do we proceed, let's say, in implementing the bot?
Any ideas on how we can create a bot these days? Remember, we work for Microsoft, right? This should give you an idea. No ideas?
Okay. So let's see this box of Legos, actually. This is what we, as developers, let's say, love to make ourselves more productive. Productivity for a developer is really key. Makes our life easier, makes us, let's say, roll out a service, a useful service for our colleagues or for our customers much faster. Actually, during these days, we've heard all these buzzwords and actually very useful ways to make ourselves more productive. Frameworks, microservices, micro frontends, and how all these frameworks, let's say, are part, and patterns are part of how to make ourselves faster, safer in terms of bugs, and at the end of the day, more productive. What Azure, let's say, and Power Platform can give us is this set of let's say, blocks as Lego blocks to help us leverage those services, make us write less code. Less code is more, as we said a bit earlier, because less code is less bugs, easier to test, easier to roll out, easier to build.
Cheaper.
Cheaper. So let's have a look on what these components are and how we as developers, let's say, can leverage in order to be more productive. Power Platform gives us a way with Power Applications, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, which is the component that we will be leveraging, let's say, for our bot, and Power Pages, a way to make it really fast to roll out a new application without writing almost any code in terms of a source control code.
So let me answer the question that we've asked before. So how are we going to be writing our bot? The answer is we do have a platform for that. That's called Power Platform. It has a number of different services inside that platform. We have Power Apps that allow us to build applications, forms. We have Power Automate that provides the business logic, the actual thing that will perform the business logic of our solution. We have virtual agents, which is a service, a component of Power Platform that allows you to build bots. And we have the newly released Power Pages, which allows you to create sites without having to write code, right? Portals. All this, the Power Platform can integrate with a lower stack of things that you see here. So we can connect the blocks that you see on the top side of this slide with the services that pro developers or developers like us are using to build APIs and services. We can easily integrate with those, and we have also a persistency layer that's available for us to persist our information.
Mm-hmm. So let's say we can leverage our own APIs or code in order to build on top of those some smart solutions that can be rolled out even in a matter of days.
So what are we going to build? So for this ask that the management team asked us to perform, right? So as we mentioned, go ahead, Nick.
So the final solution is pretty much as depicted here in the architecture. Seems to be quite simple. We just create that proxy we discussed about with API management, consuming the REST API from GitHub. Use a custom connector in the context of the Power Virtual Agents. A custom connector is a way to allow our own custom-made, let's say, API surface to be consumed in an easy way by a bot, by Power Virtual Agent. So it will allow us to, using, let's say, a specific endpoint, REST endpoint, to consume and very easily configure, let's say, what we need from that API and how the Power Virtual Agent will actually use it. Any comment on that, Costa?
So we kind of missed, we did have a slide on API management, but somehow it got lost in the translation. So we didn't mention anything about that or what's API that service and that we are going to be using. I mean, we could obviously proxy the GitHub API with code, right? We could write some sort of code that would hit the REST endpoint of GitHub and return the data that we want for the bot, right? We could have done that, but we said we don't want to write any code. We want to, as simple as possible, present an interface that could be consumed by our bot at the right-hand side of the slide. And API management actually provides that service for us. It's a managed solution that Azure offers that allows you to use any API, whether you've built it or whether you're consuming it from a third party, crunch it, manage it, alter it, provide default values, provide authentication, do all sorts of stuff that your application would have to do or your code would have to do without having to write code. And we are going to be showing you that. So that's more or less the slides that we have. We are going to jump into demos. So if you hit escape, and start from the browser, there we go. The first tab, I think it's the one that we're looking for. So let's start, hit refresh.
Try again, yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to start by creating the first component, which was the API management, and connect with GitHub and create a few REST endpoints that we can use. Nikos is going to be, I'm going to be describing what he's doing. Nikos is going to show you how easy it is to create a new API management gateway. All you have to do is provide a few pieces of information like naming and where that's going to be provisioned, in which data center of Azure, some usernames in emails.
Working with an unknown operating system.
Platform, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to learn Mac, Nikos.
Yeah. We'll try to do so
Yeah.
in a live way. Okay. So what we're doing here, Azure Portal for any resource, there is a wizard that can help you create that resource and configure it, what you need from it, the tier, and so on. So give it a name, a tier, pricing tier, depending on your needs. Actually, development tier gives you all the features you will need as premium, let's say, offers, but on a very small fraction of the cost without any SLA. For development purposes, let's say, and demo purposes, as we did right here, it's perfectly fine. Whether I need application insights, so to monitor and log the output of my API calls, maybe we don't need it there. Scale, we don't need it for development. Managed identity.
Yeah, we can jump to the review and create because
Yeah,
it has a lot of features. We don't want to confuse you with all of them. If you are interested in it, we can discuss it on the whole later on. We just need an as simple as possible proxy to proxy our API requests. And you don't have to create it. We already have. So we went ahead beforehand and created one so that we save some time and don't have to wait through the whole process. That's that proxy. It's called GitHub proxy. It has a bunch of features. What we're interested in is APIs. And we are going to be adding the APIs that we need for our bot.
So on API management, of course, it's a surface that you can manage and centralize, let's say, what you need from your APIs to behave, to enforce policies, to really control and manage their surface. We have already created, let's say, the GitHub, but let's see what would be needed in order to create a new proxy, let's say, a new API. In our cases, a proxy because we don't have the backend, we don't control, let's say, the implementation. We just want to consume it. So there are a bunch of ways that you can create a new API. Either define it manually, one operation at a time, payload, endpoint, parameters, and so on. You can import an open API definition, which is usually the most
convenient
and easy way.
And lazy. Bill Gates said that I'm going to be hiring lazy developers because they're the ones that are thinking innovative solutions to save time, right? So, yeah.
In our case, there is an open API for GitHub. Of course, it will contain and expose all the operations available. So we can either opt in to really create those 5 or 6 operations that we need for our bot, to list our issues, to really make a comment, resolve maybe an issue and so on, but not to expose everything. We're not going to make any commits, not to change any repository security settings and so on.
Yeah. So basically, as Nikos mentioned, we could go about it in two ways, right? One would be download GitHub's OpenAPI document, edit it so that we leave just the APIs that are of interest to us, like list issues, create issue, create branch, and so forth. Or we can go in API management and add these operations manually, right? So we are going to be showing you the second path because we thought that it shows how you can leverage API-M service to proxy your GitHub API. So this is the screen that you would see when you hit the plus button of create a new API, you specify, Nikos, this is the API, so you have to give the base API, not the method. So you have to specify the endpoint of GitHub. So you would specify a display name, a name, and then here you would do api.github.com, which is the base URL of GitHub. That's the base endpoint. I think it's HTTPS. And give it another suffix like Voxxed API.
GH Voxxed, okay.
Yeah. And then hit create.
Okay, create.
Yeah. So this would create my API. Now my this API is empty, so we would have to go in and create the operations. So each operation is its different method we want to call out of the GitHub API, like list issues, for example, right?
Repos or...
Yeah. So this is the path that we want to leverage. This is the endpoint, repos/org/issues/
Is it issue ID? Yeah, I think that's it.
No.
Repo issues, yes. The repo is, of course...
Yeah. Org is the organization. Repo is the repository for which we want to list the issues. And then on the bottom part of the screen, you will see that it automatically discovers the arguments that are needed for this API. We still have to create the response so that we have a rich schema that the bot can leverage.
Okay.
So yeah, just leave this like this and go to response. So this API would return a 200 OK. Yeah, this one. And then the representation of that response would be application/JSON, because that's the response that the API is returning.
Yeah.
And then for just select it, yeah, sample. We have to give it a sample payload so that we have it both as documentation and to define the schema of the response. Again, this schema will be used by the next component in our architecture.
Okay. So the definition is usually part of an open API. So we want not just to get the response, but we want actually to know the exact schema of the response in order to really programmatically consume it in a fast and convenient way from our Power agent. So I had, of course, we had tested and we have a sample response, let's say here. We can use it, and the API management will...
yeah.
Will auto-generate the schema for us. So
yeah. There we go.
Okay. So it inferred, let's say, the schema out of the response.
Perfect. It needs a name.
Yeah, definition, yeah. Issues list.
Issues response, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, doesn't really matter. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So now we have our method definition is ready. That's how we went about and created the rest of the methods that created and are depicted on the GitHub, but there is still one piece missing. Anyone knows what this piece is?
We haven't included anything about who's calling that API.
Yeah.
Could that be?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Correct. But there is still one piece missing. That's one, but there is one more. So will GitHub allow us to call the APIs like this? Don't we need to authenticate somehow with GitHub, right?
Yeah.
So how are we going to do that, right? And there are multiple ways and multiple answers to this question. One of the questions, and in a real life scenario, would be that we want our users to authenticate in the bot So basically, hit the GitHub service, get a token using auth, and then send that through APIM back to the GitHub to authenticate and authorize and get the response back, right? That's the proper solution. For this demo, though, we've already went at GitHub and obtained what's called a personal access token. I don't know if you've used that before, which means that the solution that we are going to be building is going to be bound on me, on my personal account, and I'm going to be interacting with GitHub, right? But that's just a side note. How, though, are we passing that back to GitHub? And Nikos, you want to show that?
Yeah. So what we haven't described so far is that for every operation, for every API, or even for our whole API management, let's say, resource, we can create policies. Policies are our programmatic way through the service to control all the process, let's say, of consuming and exposing an API and exposing its response.
So policies are a fancy word for an XML that describes what's going to happen when the request hits the API service, and what will happen when the response is retrieved from the API that we are consuming, right? We want to control both these paths. We want to control both what's happening when we are hitting the APIM and what's happening when we are receiving the request. Because, as I mentioned, APIM is a solution that crunches the payloads of the requests. So we want something in the middle there to handle these requests and response.
So in a policy, let's say, currently we're in a specific operation and we're creating a policy for it. There is a specific flow that these policies will be executed. So the definition of our frontend is the facade that our external customer needs or knows. So policies, inbound processing. So here, before my request hits the backend, I can transform, apply new headers before going to the next one, and we can see what kind of policies, let's say, we can create. Just a quick sample of the snippets that are available. I can filter IP addresses. I can only allow, let's say, this request to go in if only is part of my whitelisted IPs. I can limit the rate call. I can apply, let's say, that the specific customer is able to call me 1,000 times per hour, and if he goes above that, that request will not hit my backend, will not hit GitHub in this case.
Yeah. There are a set of predefined policies that you can apply, and you can extend this set of policies with custom. So what we need to do is define a policy that when the request is going out to GitHub, to pass the bearer token of my personal access token to the header so that this request gets authenticated with GitHub, right? Yeah. So let's do that. So if you go to, and there is a visual way to do it, but there is a code editor. So if you click this is the XML that I've talked about. You can see the inbound sections and the outbound sections. So if you go to our notes, you will get the
policy to add the header for the authentication part.
Yeah, I think I have it here. That's the XML. So basically, as you can see, this will, below base.
Yeah. So I can, as if I was writing, let's say, a set of classes, I can inherit my base policies, and based on that, I can apply additional policies per operation.
Command V.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this, as you can see, there is a set header XML element that adds this value to the header so that it will be passed to the GitHub API.
Okay.
Yeah.
We see here GitHub like a cryptic magic, named value. Where does it get it from? So for any kind of information that needs to be configured per environment, there is a way to do that. So it's called named values, and we have already stored there the personal access token, let's say, that our API will be leveraging to talk to GitHub.
In a safe way.
In a
It's
safe
not,
way.
It's
yeah.
not it's not shown. So
And because, of course, it's not hard-coded, I can take that exact policy and apply it, let's say, to my additional environments. Let's say I have this development environment, but I can have a production one. The policies could be exactly the same. The values, let's say, that are at runtime replaced will be different per environment. So let's save it.
yeah. And now let's show the guys the solution that we have prepared for them. So you don't have to show the creation of the rest of the APIs. Let's show them how we can test that facade if it's working. So, yeah, go there. So we have already went ahead and created all these 5 methods. So we need to get the issues correct. So, and there are 2 parameters that we need to insert. So this is my organization and return to work. Yeah, is the repository, and if we hit,
Probably don't need anything else. Yes, let's
send. Now this communicates, but we get a 200 OK, and we get back the data as the API was called.
Okay. So we have created, let's say, this surface, which is a very small subset of the operations that GitHub allows. But this is what I need for our, super duper bot. Yeah. So create a content, create a repository, get user issues and repositories.
Yeah.
So that would be all.
So now we have our proxy ready. We have our methods. How do we go about and create the next piece of the puzzle, the next Lego piece? What was in the picture, in the architecture that we've seen that needs to be created? Come on, you've seen it.
Is there a present for that?
No.
Let's revisit that slide.
Yeah. So we need the connector, right? We need the, exactly. Yeah, we need the piece that will connect my API M facade with my bot, right? We need something in the middle. And how we can go about, you want to take this?
Yeah.
How we can go about creating that, right? There are 2 ways, the easy way and the hard way. I'm going to show you both so that you know them. The easy way is a button that's right here that's called Power Platform. And from that button, I can create the connector without me having to do anything, any configuration, anything at all. If I click that button, I will get a connector automatically created for my API in the Power Apps platform. But I will show you the hard way so that you know as well. So I will try to reduce. Yeah.
This is, let's say, a shortcut that API management support, but maybe your API does not live within an API management instance.
So what I could do is go to GitHub and hit export. That will present me a screen where I can export my API as an OpenAPI JSON definition. And Power Platform supports OpenAPI version 2, so I would have to select this one. This will download my JSON file into my documents, and I'm ready to create my connector. So I will move to the Power Platform side of things, and in order to access that side of things, all you have to type is make.powerapps.com, and that would take you to this portal, to this screen. And as you see here, we have a menu item which is called Dataverse, and in here we have a menu item which is called Custom Connectors. Now this is going to take a while to load up because we have a bunch in the Microsoft tenant. It's probably the slowest page we have in Microsoft. I just hope that at some point it will be optimized. So the way that you would go about creating that new connector is by clicking this button on the right-hand side of this screen.
The thing is that we're too democratic in Microsoft, so this is open to all employees. We're about 120,000, so everybody playing around, of course, creating its own connectors.
Oops, not this one. Sorry. Cancel. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to focus with this podium. Import from API. I would add my connector name and OpenAPI definition, the JSON file that I've downloaded, and then hit create, and it would create my connector. Now, of course, besides these two ways, there is the hard way, the painful way of creating that connector manually. So you would go about create new connector, specify the APIs as before, as we did with API management, and so forth. If I do import an OpenAPI and give it a name, GitHub Voxxed. How much time do we have?
Not much.
Yeah. And give it, select the JSON file that we see here, and hit continue. It will take me to the wizard. You see there are 5 steps here: the general security, and the definition. So if I go to security, it will say, how do you want me to authenticate with the OpenAPI facade that we've created? And there is a key, actually, that's called OCP APIM subscription key that will need to be passed to authenticate with APIM. Then what's the definition? If I go to the definition, it will show me the methods that we've defined in API. It discovered this from the JSON file of the APIM, but I would see the schema of the responses as well at the bottom part of the screen. So I could go about, then it will show me a sample snippet of code, how I could call that connector from different source code, from source code, and the final step, which is the most helpful one, which is the testing. So there is testing functionality. I just have to save that connector first. So if I hit create, that would create my connector in my tenant, and then I would, if I went back to the screen and hit test, it would allow me to test the same APIs that we've seen from APIM, right? Okay, so we've done the APIM, we've done the connector, we are ready to start creating our bot. So how do we go about doing that, right? And again, I haven't written any code so far, just configuration of APIs through OpenAPI or manual configuration, right? So the next step is to go to this create of chatbots that you see here, and this will present me with this screen. And then if I hit build a new virtual agent, it will take me to the configuration page where I will have to enter the name of the bot and a few details. And once I've hit create, thank you. So this is the Voxxed bot. And what language? It will speak English and in this tenant. So that's all that's needed to create the bot. And right out of the bat, I have a bot that can interact with my users. Of course, I haven't written the business logic of this bot yet, but I'm getting the boilerplate code of how that bot is implemented. And not just that, but I can integrate that bot with different channels, and I'll show you that. So this is the home screen, right? I have a testing UI, so I have a test bot here that I can interact with the bot. What's interesting to show is that topics menu item where all conversation in bots are split up in topics, in conversational topics, right? So each topic has a triggering mechanism. So if I say, for example, list issues, that's a triggering phrase, and I'll have to create a conversational topic for that triggering phrase, right? And there are a bunch of topics already defined by default, like a simple hello, like a greeting, like an escalation, and so forth. So if I come to the testing and do hello, hopefully this will trigger the greeting topic, because hello is a triggering phrase for that topic, and will respond with the correct response. Of course, now something is not wrong, requires users to sign in. Okay, we won't be playing with that anyway. So I will switch to the one that we've prepared so that we save some time.
So trigger phrases, let's say, allow the bot to go into a specific topic, and for each topic you can have a different flow. So let's say, we'll see now on our context, but in any case, let's say you can do whatever is needed to facilitate the life of your users.
I will show the creation of a topic so that we know how that's performed, and then we'll see the list topic, right? So hopefully this will open up. Yeah. So I have a bunch of topics already defined, but let's say that I wanted a new topic. So this is how the UI allows me to create my conversational topics. Right out of the bat, it says what's the triggering phrases for that conversation. I can go here and say Olympiacos, and that would be a triggering phrase. I hope that we don't have any Panathinaikos fans.
We are in Thessaloniki, Costa. We are in Thessaloniki, Costa.
Yeah, I will take that back.
So let's make it PAOK.
Yeah. So basically, once I've defined my triggering phrases, I have a UI that allow me to do other things like, okay, I will post something back to the user, like okay, and then I can do plus and ask a question like for which soccer game, and that's a question, and the answer that the user will provide is going to be stored in a variable that's going to be available
in the context of this conversation.
Yes, yeah. And the variable is this one here, right? So I can use that variable, that response of the user later on in my flow. This is how, in a visual way, I'm creating the conversation. And I can integrate with all sorts of other stuff, like language understanding, for example, so that my triggering phrase doesn't have to be exact, but can be something that would be understood by the bot. I can do translation, I can do spell checking. All these are services that are available by Azure, right? Mm-hmm. And I can be integrated right into this bot. And without, again, I haven't written a single line of code, right? So let's go back and see one of the topics that I've created for you. So if I go to, this one, this has a bunch of triggering phrases, as you can see. Get GitHub issues, list GitHub issues, show all GitHub issues. So all the different possibilities that a user can type in the chat window, right? Then it has a question for which org. Remember, we need two variables in our API, the organization and the repository. So I have to ask for those. And you see two questions there that get stored in these variables. And then after I've got these variables, I need to actually implement the calling, invoke the API. And that needs compute. It needs business logic, right? So how would I do that from my bot? There is a thing which is called Power Automate. So if I do plus here, you would see that there is a menu item which is called call and action. And if I do that, it opens another wizard which says, how would you call that action? Create a new flow, access dynamics, where you can implement your code in C#, or find existing flows that I've created for hitting that API, right? So I have to call that and then pass the results of the invocation of that Power Automate back to my bot. Let's see how that works first, and I will show the Power Automate. Yes, Nico?
So Power Automate can leverage that connector that knows how to call GitHub. And of course, within your discussion, let's say, within the bot, you can trigger those flows to get to that connector and return the results back.
Yep. So right now, I'm using the test functionality of my conversational bot. I've entered hello. I've triggered the greeting topic, and it returned a bunch of text. That's the default behavior I was expecting. So I will do get GitHub issues. Yeah, it asks for which org, and you can see on the right-hand side the debugging kind of thing. It shows me in which step the bot is currently at for this specific topic. I would say the same thing that we've said earlier in our testing. So I would do Pantos, which is my org. Then it proceeds and asks me for which repo. I would do return to work. And yeah, it returns two issues that I have in this particular repository, the second and the demo issue, right? And there is a button that if I press here, it will take me to GitHub to see that specific issue. Okay, so I have two more things to show you, and we will wrap it up. One is the Power Automate part. How did we actually created that action? The second one, which I wanted to show you, is how do we expose that bot? Okay, we built it, right? How do we leverage Slack and Teams? That was the requirement from business, right? There is this functionality here, which says
Costa
publish.
burgers are almost ready outside, so
Yeah,
you better hurry.
I will wrap it up. Yeah, after all, there's nothing much to it. All you have to do is press a button, and you can see here that I have a web channel, a Facebook channel, a Skype channel, Slack, Teams, a bunch of channels that I can leverage with the same piece of code without having to rewrite my application. I can take that and export it to any channel that I want, right? So all I have to do is publish. This is hosted on Office 365, on my Office 365 tenant, so I don't have to deploy it to a VM, Azure, on-prem, somewhere. It's living there, so no compute costs for me. And now the second thing that I wanted to show you, which is the Power Automate. So I will go back to my make preview Power Apps. Yeah. And I will go to flows, which is the way that Power Automate is implemented. And you will see here that I have these flows already designed. How do I create them? There is a designer. So if I go to list GitHub issues and hit edit, there is a graphical flow designer, which allows you to design the business logic you want to implement. And it's pretty straightforward. When I'm triggered from the bot, hit the issues endpoint. That's the connector that we've created, the custom connector that we've created. So hit this connector with these arguments that are being passed from the bot, remember, the bot asked for those, and then do some calculation, some crunching, you see here there is a condition, so if then else, and so forth. So it takes the response back from GitHub. It picks up some of the data, like the title, the description, the link, because that's the 3 pieces of information we need to present in the bot. The customers are not interested for the whole JSON. They need the title, the description, and a link to press, or the status, for example, something like that. So I'm picking the elements out of the JSON, and I'm composing the response that's going to be sent back to the customer, right? So I'm doing that functionality in the Power Automate flow. And that's all, right? I have my bot ready. I have configured, in a matter of hours, created the bot, released it into Teams, Slack, and I will return back to this to close up. There are only 2 slides left, so we won't be keeping you, just 1 slide actually, which is the references for learning more about the services that we've seen. Sorry for that. So if you want to know about Power Virtual Agents, Power training, and the API management that we've talked about, and the REST API. So, in 40 minutes, how long was it, Nikos? 40 minutes?
Now.
Okay, 45. We stole 5 minutes.
Okay.
We gave out 2 bugs, and we built a bot, right? So.
Congrats.